Coming up today, a flurry of diplomatic activity this week as the nuclear envoys of the region's major players will meet to discuss North Korea's nuclear test. The talks come as the UN Security Council is set to adopt a resolution against Pyongyang. Global oil prices tumbled to roughly $32 a barrel, a 12-year low on the back of a supply glut and Chinese demand fears. Plus, midwinter is finally beginning to bite. Large parts of Korea's central region saw the mercury dip to well below minus 10 degrees Celsius this morning. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 12th of January. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us. As always, thank you very much. I'm Mark Broom. Now we begin with the ongoing international efforts to punish North Korea for its latest nuclear test. South Korea's top nuclear envoy has lined up a series of meetings with his counterparts from the United States, Japan and China that will centre on Pyongyang's latest provocation. While coordination with all three is important, Seoul believes China is the key, given its influence over its longtime ally. Connie Kim starts us off.
The first round of nuclear envoy talks since North Korea tested its fourth device last week will be held on Wednesday in Seoul. Hwang Jung-guk, South Korea's special representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs, will discuss possible responses, including a strong and comprehensive UN Security Council resolution, with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts Sang Kim and Kimihiro Ishikane. The three are also expected to call on China, North Korea's traditional and longtime ally, to play a more active role in pressuring Pyongyang. Beijing reacted sternly to the news last week, but its stance has since softened considerably. Chinese representative for the six-party nuclear talks, Wu Da-wei, has emphasized that Beijing will cooperate in adopting a new UN Security Council resolution against Pyongyang, but only to the degree that it thinks will help soothe the tension. Based on the discussions in Seoul, the South Korean envoy will hold talks in Beijing on Thursday with his Chinese counterpart, Wu Da-wei. The focus will be on China's assessment of North Korea's hydrogen bomb test claim and the degree of sanctions that will be agreed at the UN. Discussions of possible responses to Pyongyang's latest provocation will not end there. Vice ministerial level officials from South Korea, the U.S. and Japan will meet in Tokyo on Saturday to discuss the results of the discussions between their respective nuclear envoys. However, there are concerns close cooperation between the three countries will make it difficult for Beijing to take a strong stance against North Korea, as it will not want to risk losing its strategic asset. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And as a follow-up to that report, trade between North Korea and China has fallen off dramatically over the past 12 months. According to Voice of America on Tuesday, the total trade volume between the two countries during the January to November period of last year was $4.9 billion, a 15% drop compared to the same period a year before. China's exports and imports to North Korea decreased by 17% and 13% during the period. North Korea's exports of iron ore to China fell 68%, while shipments of anthracite, a major export item, fell 6.3%. Experts believe the decline is due to the deterioration in relations between the two countries. The South Korean government is kicking off the new year with a renewed focus on preventing and eradicating corruption. In a speech on Tuesday, Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-an unveiled a set of major government initiatives to eliminate corruption, particularly among public officials responsible for multi-billion-dollar projects. He said the government will also launch various monitoring and surveillance systems to prevent corruption. The systems will be applied to a number of national projects, starting with ones related to the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. The Prime Minister said the government's efforts are aimed at both reviving the economy and regaining the public's trust. President Park Geun-hye will begin receiving policy briefings from her cabinet from this Thursday. Now, in her fourth of 5 years in office, President Park has asked her ministers to focus on targeted goals. She also wants to make sure the public can feel the result of her policies. For a rundown of what to expect this year, Song Ji-sun reports.
President Park's goal this year is not to introduce a new initiative, but to introduce tangible results from consistent policy directions, as it's the last year of a 3-year economic innovation plan and a finish line for major reforms in labor, finance, education, and public sectors. The key tasks continue to be aimed at structural reforms to create growth engines for the next 30 years. In teams grouped under 5 themes, relevant government agencies and ministries will report their status and plans over the next 2 weeks. The sessions that begin Thursday are aimed at revitalizing the economy by balancing domestic demand and exports, involving 7 economy-related ministries and commissions. Next up, a group led by the Ministry of Future Planning seeks to boost growth engines through Park's Creative Economy Initiative and cultural prosperity. In the third briefing, job creation for youth and customized welfare will be the keywords to counter high youth unemployment and the country's low birth rate. On January 22nd, Chiefs of Foreign Affairs, National Defense, and Unification will lay out their blueprint for building the groundwork for peaceful reunification of the 2 Koreas. The ministers are also set to indicate their countermeasures to North Korea's latest nuclear threats. In the last session, Ministries of the Interior, Justice, and Public Safety will lay out their plans for innovating the nation. The administration's goal is to come up with concrete plans for these tasks so that the people can actually feel the effect of major policies.
The annual briefing and format is given to the president from the ministers, but the president has asked them to make it as a report to the nation and the people. The cabinet members are preparing the presentation accordingly.
To make sure ordinary people get involved in policy setting, this year's briefings will also include debates with civilians and experts taking part so that they can together project the actual impact of proposed policies for the people. 송지선, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the financial markets given the volatility right now. And Korean shares traded lower on Tuesday as of 11:50 a.m. local time, about 17 minutes ago. The benchmark Kospi had lost 0.2% from Monday's close. Shares also traded lower in China, with the benchmark Shanghai Composite Index falling 0.2% as of 11:50 a.m. Korean Standard Time. At one point in early trading, the index had fallen below the psychologically significant 3,000 level for the first time since September of last year, but it has since rebounded as of 11:50 at least. On Wall Street, stocks closed mixed overnight amid a plunge in global oil prices, which tumbled more than 5% to a 12-year low. We'll have more details about that in our next story. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added over 0.3%, while the S&P 500 added around 0.1%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq, however, shared more than 1%. And as we just touched upon there, global oil prices have sunk to a 12-year low due to concerns about a growth slowdown in China, as well as a continuing global supply glut. This month's U.S. benchmark West Texas Intermediate fell below $32 a barrel, its lowest since December 2003. Europe's benchmark Brent North Sea crude also slipped to $31.48 a barrel, the lowest since April 2004. Now, analysts say the price drop is mainly driven by worries over the grim economic outlook for China, which is the world's second largest consumer of oil. Investment banks Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs predicted oil prices could fall further, even further, to a range of $20 to $25 a barrel. The UN humanitarian team overseeing aid operations in Syria says desperately needed food and medicine has safely reached 3 besieged towns and villages in the country. International calls for intervention grew after images of severely malnourished people circulated all over social media. Our Son Jung-in has more.
Trucks loaded with much-needed food, medicine, and other supplies arrived in the besieged town of Madaya on Monday to be distributed to some 40,000 people at risk of starvation. Residents there had to resort to eating leaves since the Syrian army and its Lebanese ally Hezbollah took control of the town in July of last year. A doctor treating people at a center said they had not received any medical assistance for 6 days.
On January 7th, we dealt with 200 cases of fainting due to people not having had food for 1 week.
Aid convoys also reached 2 other villages in northern Syria, both under siege by rebels fighting Bashar al-Assad's forces. The United Nations and the International Committee of the Red Cross, who are orchestrating the aid operation, have warned that a one-time delivery will not be enough and said the most important thing was to be able to provide aid on a regular basis. The delivery was allowed by the Syrian government last week after photos of starving children and adults appeared widely on social media, prompting worldwide condemnation. The UN is planning to convene peace talks later this month in Geneva in an effort to end the nearly 5 years of civil war in Syria that has killed more than 250,000 people and displaced even more. 손정인, Arirang News.
Now, staying in the Middle East, around 50 people have been killed in 4 separate attacks by Islamic State militants in Iraq. One of the attacks on Monday evening local time targeted a shopping mall in the center of Baghdad. Witnesses say a car bomb went off, then militants ran in, spraying people with bullets. Security forces stormed the building and killed 2 of the attackers. 18 people were reportedly killed in that attack. 3 other bombings also happened in or around the Iraqi capital on Monday evening, killing 25 to 30 others. In a statement claiming responsibility, ISIS said the attacks targeted Shiite Muslims, and it warned worse was yet to come. Now, Korean scientists have developed a faster and more exact way of examining brain cells and tissues, which could have positive implications for diagnostic medicine and brain mapping. Lee Ji-won has more.
Korean scientists have found a way to see through an organ without damaging any tissues using a process for tissue clearing and labeling. What you see here is the brain of an ordinary laboratory mouse on the left, and on the right is a brain that's gone through the process. When the tissue is put into acrylamide, a compound used for making contact lenses, and then heated, molecules connect with one another, creating a net. Then a surfactant is added and fat is melted out, leaving only cells and tissues behind. Next, a dye is added to make the tissues easier to see. The scientists were successful in completing the process for mice embryos, rabbit brains, and web-foot octopi. The development is an advance on previous tissue clearing techniques and makes the process faster and allows for better visualization.
Unlike the previous method, where we had to slice thousands of layers of tissue and put them together to see one neuron, this technology is a great advancement, as deep structures can be seen clearly and exactly without any damage.
The technology is expected to not only improve the process of brain mapping, but could also expedite the results of diagnostic tests. The study was published in the January issue of the international journal Scientific Reports. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, the man you can see behind me, Argentina and Barcelona forward Lionel Messi, has won an unprecedented 5th Ballon d'Or award. Messi received over 41% of the votes, beating Cristiano Ronaldo and Neymar, who got 28% and 8% respectively. Either Messi or Ronaldo have won the past 8 awards given out to the world's best footballer that year. US midfielder Carly Lloyd, who you can see there, who scored a hat-trick in the Women's World Cup final, scooped the Women's Award. Barcelona manager Luis Enrique was named FIFA's Coach of the Year. Now, we can safely say that after a slow start, Korea is finally in the full grips of mid-winter. Temperatures this morning started well below freezing. The morning low in Seoul was minus 8.3 degrees Celsius, but even that was nothing really compared to Gapyeong in Gyeonggi-do province that saw the mercury dip to a toe-numbing minus 14.1 degrees Celsius. The freezing point is as high as it's going to get in Seoul today. Busan will feel the mildest at just 7 degrees Celsius. With that, let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching, and we'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next scheduled newscast is coming up at 6 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.